Today we're gonna talk. Oh, whoa! Cool it, Voidy, cool it. Voidy ate some beard earlier. Man, Voidy's still hungry. Today we're gonna talk about David Grann's The Wager, and hopefully save it from Voidy. Don't you touch that book now. Hello, I'm Andrew Palmer. David Grann's The Wager has appeared on many a top 10 list of 2023. So naturally, I've got Voidy. Can you set the mood or something? Better. So naturally, I gotta check it out. Let's dig in. If you don't like plot spoilers, don't worry. You can skip to this time right here, get straight to what worked and what didn't. In 1740, Commodore Anson was tasked by the British Admiralty to take a small fleet of ships around Cape Horn in South America. The goal of this mission was to capture a Spanish galleon and return with the treasure that offered. But due to conflicts that arose at the same time and sickness and just plain life in the 1740s, they had to resort to press gangs and other conscription tactics just to be able to staff the boats enough to undertake this mission. Once the fleet started their mission, bad winds and sickness followed them everywhere. By the time they got to South America, they had already lost hundreds of people. And when they started around Cape Horn, everyone in the crew was getting scurvy. It seemed like, at least. The captain of the Wager eventually died, and Captain Cheap had to take over. The torrential waves that they faced once they started around Cape Horn tore the entire fleet apart, leaving the Wager alone trying to battle against the elements. When they finally got over to Chile, they had a broken mast and the ship was falling apart. The crew were stressed out of their lives, and then the ship wrecked on an island with the most inhospitable climate. From the minute the Wager crashed on the rocks, it was clear that this group of sailors was not going to remain intact. They had already formed two groups, one a group of nihilists and one a group of survivors. The survivors wanted to live and were willing to fight for it. They rounded up longboats and started ferrying supplies from the ship to the island. But the nihilists didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay and drink themselves into stupidity. And so eventually, 3 days later, they said, "We had enough, we want to live." But they didn't want to remain with the main group of people who had wanted to survive. Their little town was too much for them. Captain Cheap was ruling this group with an iron fist, and they didn't want to be a part of it. So they went off to the south end of the island and formed their own little community. Being trapped on an island is very stressful, and Captain Cheap's men were not immune from this stress. They began to question every decision that he made. And as food stores began to run low, another group split off from Captain Cheap, those that were following Gunner Bulkeley. Gunner Bulkeley had no right to rule anybody in the eyes of the Navy. He was too low of a rank, but he had reason and logic on his side. He wanted to build a raft and go home through the Strait of Magellan. His group became a problem for Captain Cheap. And eventually tensions got to the boiling point when Captain Cheap shot one of Bulkeley's supporters in the cheek. He didn't die right away, but within days gangrene had set in and he eventually passed. Cheap had lost too much support. Bulkeley's crew now had someone that could rightfully lead the sailors. Captain Cheap's second in command. Bulkeley's group managed to build the raft that they're going to use to survive. That, combined with two other boats that they had, should fit most of the men. So they set off. They don't get very far. They had left Captain Cheap behind. And another group in Bulkeley's group decided that they too are not going to follow Bulkeley's orders. That, in fact, they should have stayed with Captain Cheap. That what they were doing was mutiny and could get them hanged. And so, trying to avoid this, they go back to Captain Cheap and side with him. Bulkeley's group eventually just continue on to the Strait of Magellan, and Captain Cheap's group head to their original destination, Chiloa Island, to fulfill their mission of trying to steal a Spanish galleon. Bulkeley's group manages to get through the Strait of Magellan, but at a cost. They had another boat with the raft. That boat is lost with the men on it. With only the raft left, they cannot make land to get food, and so they have to park the raft offshore and have sailors swim to land to get food. Well, during one of these ventures, the tide shifts, and Bulkeley leaves the group that had gone ashore to get food behind. They eventually get to Rio Grande and race home. Bulkeley is trying to save his hide. He knows that what they did is questionable, and if he can get home first, he can be the dominant narrative. Captain Cheap's group didn't give up. There was a formidable bay, but they spent months trying to cross it. The rocks and the tide made it completely impassable, and they only managed to survive it with the help of native people. Only about 3 of them made it to Cholo Island, and those 3 were immediately captured by the Spanish. With Bulkeley back in England, the war of narratives begins. The story of what happened to these sailors is not only of public interest, everyone wants to hear it, but it's also a problem for the Admiralty. These men might have committed mutiny, and sure, Bulkeley's tale is portraying it a certain way, but when Commodore Anson returns, successful from capturing a Spanish galleon all by himself, he questions Bulkeley's narrative. And eventually, when Captain Cheap gets back to England, oh boy, the court-martial is in order. The court-martial is narrowly focused. It doesn't consider mutiny at all. In fact, it only looks at one thing. Did any of the sailors not fulfill their oath to keep the wager from being wrecked? They find one sailor might be responsible, but for the most part, everyone else gets to go on living their lives. The war of narratives remains in the public domain, and Bulkeley is trying to sell his tale to earn money, as do many of the other sailors who lived. The war of narratives is won. But it's not by any of the people who were on the wager. It's not Bulkeley or Captain Cheap. No, it's Commodore Anson, of all people, who wins the narrative war about what happened on the wager. He wasn't even there. He went off and fulfilled the mission to go capture a Spanish galleon. But when he writes his tale, he concludes a section on the wager, and that becomes the dominant narrative. And it becomes world famous. That tale is told all around the world. The style of this book works. It is nonfiction, but it doesn't bludgeon you with facts in a dry style. No, it reads almost like fiction written in third-person omniscient, but it's very well researched. The psychic distance is incredibly close to the sailors. In fact, we pulled directly from their own writing multiple times. This style is exactly what I want my nonfiction to read like. I love it. He doesn't just succeed in style alone. No, David Grann understands the inherent narrative structure of this story. Where he places chapter breaks continue to pull you along at every turn, making you just wonder what happens next. This is something we can all learn from. How to apply a narrative structure to nonfiction to make it interesting, to keep readers engaged. It is fantastic. I almost hesitate to say that there's anything that this needs to improve on, because I enjoyed it so much. But if this were fiction, I would say the pacing might be a little fast. And there's a good reason for it. There's not enough facts to fill in the gaps. And because this is nonfiction, you can't just start extrapolating willy-nilly. But it also makes it seem like events happen quickly. We never sit in any one scene too long. We don't get to steep in the stew that is this story to the completely satisfying conclusion that I would want. But again, that's if it were fiction, and it's not, it's nonfiction. This might be related to the fact that it's nonfiction, and it might not, but I really wish that we could have delved deeper into the characters' motives. Why was Captain Cheap trying to rule this group of men with an iron fist? Why did he shoot that man in the cheek? Why is Bulkley trying to create this tension among the men? Is he actually aiming to exert some sort of control over them? I'm lost understanding the motives. And again, I'm not sure if that's necessarily because it's nonfiction or not, but I really want to explore the characters more to understand why they do what they do. Well, Voidy, I think we can remove the mood setting. There you go. So this book is on the top 10 lists of books of 2023 all over the place. And I absolutely understand why. It is well written, it is well researched, it's interesting, and this style is now my preferred style for how I want nonfiction to read. So Voidy, I don't think... Whoa. No. Not today, Voidy. We're going to save this book, and it does not go into the void. Thank you for watching. I'm Andrew Palmer. This is Learning to Master. If you'd like more content like this, go to learningtomaster.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you'd like to follow along with the next book that I'm going to critique, it's The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. So stay tuned right here on LTM. David Grann's The Wager has appeared on many top 10 books of 2023. And who says 2023 that is? Appeared on many top 10 of 2023, 2023, 2023, 2023, 2023, 2023.